Hello. In this video, I will show you how to take apart a rusty Model A engine where most of the parts are stuck and hard to move. This is the engine as I got it. It came without a head. The first step is cleaning it. I really wish I would have cleaned it more thoroughly since all that dirt and grime caused me trouble throughout the whole process. Here you see me cleaning the engine. I'm going at it with a screwdriver and a steel brush. I try and get the major chunks off, and I try and get the debris out of the engine, but it takes a while to get everything. Now I'm coming in and I'm removing that oil return pipe. It's held in place by 2 bolts. Inside it's a mess. Almost looks like an animal was making a nest in there. Then I turn my attention to the valve cover and it's 10 bolts. These come off without too much trouble. I also want to mention here that I'm working on this engine on the bench just because it's easier to get a better shot. I'd prefer to work on it on the floor, but then I wouldn't be able to get as good as the video. Alright, with the bolts out, I take the cover off. What a mess greets me. Definitely appears to me like some kind of an animal or an insect was making all this. Look at all that stuff. Here we get a better view of it, just full of stuff that shouldn't be there. I'm pretty confident it wasn't like that when I left the factory. So I come back, I've got my dust mask on because I don't want to breathe this in, and I just try and get all that stuff out of the valve chamber. I'm using my screwdriver and dustpan on account of I don't have a shop vacuum, unfortunately. This makes the dust mask all the more important, and I'm going to clean it up immediately because this stuff was pretty revolting. Now I remove these studs. They would hold the intake and exhaust manifolds in place. I'm using a pipe wrench and plenty of oil, trying to work these stubborn bolts off. The engine is shifting around a whole lot. Like I said, I have it on the bench just to get a better video, but it's kind of scary with it bouncing around. Anyways, these bolts are pretty stubborn, but this is the process I take. I took them both out, but I'm only going to make you watch one. Yeah, and there I can get it out by hand. Now I turn my attention to the head bolts. After that experience with the intake and exhaust bolts, I've chosen a much larger pipe wrench. I won't show you all these bolts, but it's basically the same process. I just wrench them out. Okay, now I'm at the back of the engine. So here we have the flywheel mounting bolts. These are in there just loose, and so they come out no problem. Now I come to this little bolt. I think it holds the oil pump in place. I'm not confident about that. It comes out without much difficulty. Then I move to this one. It is right above the oil return pipe. That one's also a pretty small little plug. It's a little stuck at first, but it doesn't take much to wrench it off. Now I'm over at the water inlet. So it's got these clips on it, and I just struggle an immense amount to take them off. This pipe is far past ruined. It is just rotted out and in terrible shape. I should have just cut it, but I decided to work on the clips. I was able to shimmy that out. Found that little piece of metal. That was kind of concerning, not sure what that's from. But taking that off does allow me to get at the second clip, and here we get to experience more of this nightmare. So there I am, struggling, and I'm able to just shimmy it off now, and you can see it's all rotted, and if I were to squeeze it, it would break right away. So now I can come on to the casting itself. I can take off that bolt and the little clamp that's on it. And then that allows me to come back in with my breaker bar and I can take off these larger bolts that hold the casting in place. These come off quite a bit quicker than the other ones, and I keep that gasket for a pattern. So now here I am, the engine is nice and precarious. I am up at the front timing cover and I'm loosening these bolts at the peril of my own safety. I think there are 7 bolts holding this cover in place. They're kind of stubborn, so they take a bit of working over, a bit of oil, but if you just keep at it, they'll come out eventually. And then I go for these bolts here. I think they're mounting bolts for mounting the engine to the frame. I'm not entirely sure. They're in there loose though. They come out pretty easily. And then I'm going to come in here. You'll see I'm going to go take the crankshaft dog off. It was on there just loose. This would normally be used to turn the engine over with a hand crank. And then lastly, I'm going to get these bolts that are under the oil pan. They're just holding that timing valve cover in place. And then I can knock the cover off. And then I can just kind of gently open it here. And as I do, what a mess. What a mess. Now, the careful observer may notice that this is not the correct material that should be in your engine. It should be oil. So I decided to brush it all up with the dustpan. Then I finished taking the oil pan off the engine, or the straw pan I should call it. So I just take all those bolts off. I elect to also take out the drain plug. There it goes. So I'm shimmying the pan, and I'm shimmying it some more. Yeah, it just takes a bit more and then it does break free. And then here we can see the full extent of the nest inside. There's pieces of twine, paper, straw, tarps, just a complete mess. The trash in the engine, it's not supposed to be there. I've seen no manual specifying filling your engine with this kind of debris, so I'm going to be coming back in there with my dustpan and broom and taking all that stuff out of there. Yeah, and there we go. Again, I'm wearing the dust mask for this part because I do not know what's in there and I do not want to be breathing that stuff in. And I really wish I had a shop vac for this. So now it's all cleaned up. I go for the oil pump and that comes out real nice. I like that. It looks to be in pretty good condition, so I'm going to set that aside. Now I'm going to come to this oil pipe. Apparently it's supposed to be threaded in and tack welded, but just kind of wiggles out. I don't know what was holding it in place. So now I'm going for the big ends of the connecting rods. I'm just going to loosen these bolts. Note that all the bolts on this engine are different. There's 3 different types of bolts. It seems like they were mixed at some point. I also come in. I make marks on the camshaft side where I can. This is just to aid me when I do go to reassemble this. I want to make sure I'm putting them in order with piston 1 at the front and piston 4 at the back. Now I'm coming back with my breaker bar. Whatever nuts it's able to fit, I take those off. And then I get a little sick of that, so now I come to the rear main bearing. It's got these cotter pins holding these castellated nuts in place, so I just take them out. I'm bending the legs straight with a screwdriver and with pliers, and then trying to lever them out. You see me get that one without much trouble. Now I try and get my socket, my breaker bar on it, but there's such a mess that I have to clean them up a bit first. Then after that I'm able to take them off. Here we have me spinning them out. Yeah, not much fight left in those ones. And yet it still takes so long. Alright, now I'm at the front of the engine. So there's some nuts here for the main bearing as well. I'm trying to take it off with my breaker bar. I'm just hammering on it to try and loosen it. This one's giving me a whole lot of trouble. I don't have great leverage. And then this one's kind of the worst. This is for the middle bearing and the socket doesn't really fit in there. I should have listened and I should have just stopped right there because I get the thing stuck. I can't get the socket back out again. It was just a mess. I ended up having to disassemble the socket, as you see here. Deeply embarrassing moment that has been captured on video for your enjoyment. And then even with that out, it still takes so much prying to get this socket out. Oh, that was awful. Yeah, see, I'm done with that one. Here I am back on the front bearing now. This time I got a lot better leverage. I stand on the engine and I'm just loosening these bolts for the front main bearing. I get sick of that, so I come up to the valve chamber and I just take out this spring that would be holding this distributor driver in place. To take it out, this part has bevel cut gears, so you have to use a twisting motion and a pushing motion. And I just tap it out here with a piece of scrap metal. Unfortunately, I don't have any kind of pins to knock it out with, and here you see the bevel gear on it. So now I'm loosening the last nut holding those main bearings in place. This is for the mill bearing. It's accessed through the valve cover. It's a pretty awkward position, so I ended up having to use this breaker bar quite a bit. I should have switched to a ratchet partway through, but I did not do that. That's just the setup there to keep the bolt from spinning as I'm taking the nut off. And then here you see me going in with some vice grips. I'm just going to wiggle that bolt out. I'm also going to keep track of the shims because some of these bearings have shims. Yeah, there it is. That's what it looks like. They're just made out of brass. Here we see the bearings. They all look pretty good to me. They're still shiny. They're still polished. That's what I like to see. No real obvious signs of damage. So pretty happy with that. So now I'm back to the connecting rods and the big ends. I have this brass shim. I'm going to put that into my socket, which is a little too big. I think these nuts are fractional sizes, like something 32nds. And then I just knock it on with the hammer, put my breaker bar on it, and I'm able to get these loose without turning the corners on them. Yeah, and they're coming off pretty easily. So this sped up and it has them off. Now I'm taking off the big ends themselves. This particular one came out without much difficulty. It has shims on it though, so you kind of got to keep those in order, know which one they go with. I also track which side they go on, cam or opposite of the cam. Some of the big ends took more persuading. There you saw me tapping on it with the hammer, but it does come out. Alright, now I'm trying to free the crankshaft itself. I have all the big ends off, I have all the main bearings out, and I'm just hitting it with a piece of wood to loosen it. I'm using that piece of wood so that I don't mar the surface. I don't want to mess this up. But halfway through I get a bit paranoid and I realize I want to make sure there's timing marks on these gears. So I just go in with my brush and I clean it off and I point to the timing marks. They are indeed there. What a relief. Now I'm able to take the crankshaft out by hand. It comes out really nicely, just a gorgeous looking piece of metal. Look at that, isn't that nice? Oh, those bearing journals look great. I just love the shape of this thing, I don't know. It's a handsome little unit. Now I'm going to clean up these bolt holes. So I have my tap, I just oil it and spin it in. This gets a lot of the mud and the dirt out, and it also cuts through the rust and cuts new threads basically. Same kind of idea for the bolts, except you use a die instead of a tap. So I just clean those guys up real quick. And then here I have the engine in a 12-ton hydraulic press. I had tried hammering on the pistons, but I could not persuade them to move. So now I use the press. Here's me pushing the pistons down from the top. I do this just to loosen them so that I can clean the cylinder walls. You do not want to push them out this way because they can't be pushed out this way. Eventually they'll hit those main bearings and break them. So here I've got them loose, I've got the cylinder walls cleaned out, and this is the way they need to come out. They need to come out from the top. And this is what I mean. It should be pretty clear here. They're already loose. I'm just hitting them with a hammer to take them out. That's what they look like. The bearing's pretty beat up. I'm not too pleased about that. That was there before the hydraulic press, by the way. I promise that. There's another one. It's all messed up. And that brings me to this part of the video, oh goodness, where I had to take these valve springs off. Oh no, with this tool I built. Oh, it's so terrible. Oh, that was awful. Jeez. Yeah, it's a lot better if you can get an actual valve compressor tool. You've got to get these little retainers out. You can't put the tool under the retainers or else you won't be able to get it out. And that just shows the process I had to do for all 8 of these valves. Glad that's over. Here I've got my special little thing I welded together to take this locking nut off the camshaft. It's on there loose. It's actually supposed to be pretty tight, but I wasn't able to take it off just with my fingers at first. And there it is. Now I'm going to take the gear itself off. These things are kind of fragile. They're made of a composite material to make the engine run a little more quietly. So I just gently lever it out with this block of wood. Tap, 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 and then I can shimmy it off. And there you see the gear. The camshaft did not want to come out, so I put it in the hydraulic press. In doing so, I got that little bit of mystery metal falling out. That was a little bit concerning. And then I try and take the camshaft out by hand, and it keeps getting stuck on things. What is it getting stuck on? Turns out I didn't have the lifters lifted high enough, so it was getting stuck on those. So I had to come back. You'll see it here in just a moment with a block of wood, and I just hammer on it. That looks pretty aggressive sped up, and it was pretty aggressive at real speed. Those things were really rusted in place. Here I am working the valves back and forth. I do this and oil them just because they were rusted in place as well, and I need to be able to move them to try and push the lifters down. Some of the lifters come out real nice just like that. Most of them though, you'll see me try them and there's no way I'm getting them out by hand. They are stuck in there. Don't want to go nowhere. So this is the method I take to get the lifters out. I put a piece of wood between the valve and the lifters, and then I just push on the valve, and that pushes the lifter down. You'll see me now lift this valve again, and I'm going to put a longer block of wood in there, and that pushes the lifter all the way out. Here's a tool I'm pretty proud of. This is to get the valve guides out. You have to remove the valve guides in order to remove the valves, because the valves, as you can see, have a mushroom bottom, and they will not fit through their guides until the split guides are pounded out. So I just fit that tool over the valve. The seat goes against the top of that tool and it drives the guides out. I managed to get them out. Those were the hardest part though. That was really miserable. I hated that. I'm glad that part's over, but I had to do it 8 times. Anyways though, thanks for watching. If you have a Model A engine that's all rusted in place, I hope this was helpful to you. If you don't, I hope it was at least entertaining. Thanks for watching, and I hope I'll see you again next time.